think one of the things that we have in common, unfortunately, is being survivors of rape, which you just mentioned. Um, I love that, you talk about your support system. And I think one of the main people in your support system is your partner, Fal. And I love hearing your stories about him as well. And I was just curious because, I remember, actually, I was listening to there's a I don't know, one of your commentaries, you're talking about how, you used to hide your ARVs. And it actually sparked a memory for me, because then I remembered I was in an entanglement, and somewhere near the time that I had, after I had been raped, and this guy found the ARVs, and 24 hours I was damped and I was blocked from social media, So I think there is sort of, I feel like there's some males or anyway, other people that are not able to handle somebody who has been through a sexual trauma and sexual violence. And I was just curious how you have navigated the space as a couple.
So, to provide a bit of context, so I got raped in 2008. In 2008, I was 18. So that was my first sexual experience, which completely sucks. And at that time, I was in a relationship, my first ever serious relationship. And, immediately afterwards, I think I actually mentioned the ARVs and medication in the last podcast episode that featured your story. And, they give you all of these things because you have to kind of it takes about 6 months before you're cleared of HIV, and a couple of other sexually transmitted diseases once you get raped. So you have to get on to ARVs. And you can imagine 2008, I'm just not only am I trying to understand that I just got raped, but now I have to deal with, at the time, and then contributed to the stigma. We would never call HIV. HIV would be the big disease with a small name. And we had all of these weird things that would say. And so it was a lot for me to stomach at the time. And I had to do that for 6 months before getting the clear. Granted, at 18, I was not living with the guy I was dating at the time. And he was, if my memory serves me right, he was already in uni in another country. But I was living at home with my mom and my sisters, and my sister and I were sharing a room. So of course I had to hide all medication. And having a conversation with him after it happened, he was very supportful. I'll have to give him that. And I think what was hard for him to navigate was the guilt of feeling that he wasn't there, and would he have been able to stop it, and all of those things. Which I don't know how he navigated. We were all young, and then we broke up and life moved on. I want to say that I've been fortunate to, even in, a toxic relationship, be able to get some form of support in that regard. But what I think is hard is, and there's not a lot of talk about it, because as Africans, we don't talk about sex. And then amongst women, we don't even see sex as something that a woman should enjoy, and should have autonomy over. Before marriages, women and the bride are set aside, and you're taught how to please your man. Nobody even teaches you to figure out what do you like, and who's telling him how to please you. That conversation is not had. So now when you add sexual trauma on top of it, it just is a whole other monster, right? And so I think it was hard for me in one relationship to have that conversation with the person I was with post getting raped. But I think there was one which was I was very fortunate to have an experience, and I'm still very good friends with that particular ex, because he was very, maybe because he was much older, I don't know, or a good person, I really don't know, but very sensitive to the fact. I never once felt rushed to anything. I never once felt pressured, and I could voice my fears. I could have actual breakdowns, and our breakup had nothing to do with that. And then comes my current partner now, Fal, who I'm married to. And by the time we were getting together, the story was out there. But on an intimate level, again, it changes how you view sex. It changes how you view men. It changes so many things. And then you're in therapy, so you kind of have to rope in your partner when necessary. And you have to, even if not have him in the sessions, you are doing your healing and are also trying to pull this person at your pace as well to understand this thing that you pray will never ever have to understand the way you do, right? And it's difficult. It's very difficult. But it requires, I guess, on his part to be so patient. He's just so patient with me. And at times I'm like, if I were you, this is it. But he's very patient, and he meets me where I'm at, and I don't have to explain everything in words. It's almost like he's in my head, and he can. And I know we're told in relationships one mustn't assume and you must communicate and all of these things, but there are times where it's really difficult to do that, and he gets it, and he doesn't require me to navigate healing and explaining what's happening to him while I'm in the trenches, because I mean, I have anxiety. That's hectic. And so, I have to give him a heads up. Like, I feel like and on those days, Fal will first, I don't cook in this house. I hate cooking. So, and no thanks. He will be figuring out dinner, especially on those days where he can sense she's actually not she's going through it right now. I wouldn't even have to say, hey, can you help me with ABC? He just kind of steps in. And so it's been good to have somebody who can sense those cues and kind of understands and goes out of his way to understand the issue that is sexual violence, goes out of his way to even come to certain talks or whatever that I have, so he understands better. And we have those conversations, because him being a man, there's unlearning he has to do based on how men are conditioned, right, in our society. And so it's great. It's almost like he passes a class, when we have a national issue that's around sexual violence, and he'll be like, I think this should not have been written like this because of ABCD. I'm like, yes, you're past the class. But I'm just glad to have had very patient partners, and obviously settle down with one who's so understanding of how just up and down the healing journey is. And it's so unpredictable. You can get a trigger from some, just randomly. You could be just having a good day, and you bump into a news article and you're having flashbacks, so having somebody who understands that this is going to be our normal, how do we adjust, is really a blessing. Yeah.
When we're talking about healing, I think there's a saying which people kind of latch onto and like to say, time heals all things. But you talk about intentional healing.
Yeah.
So I just want you to expand on that.
I don't think time heals a damn thing. I think it's one of those things where people just give time a lot of work that is not on its job description. And even the whole thing around time, I just feel like I've come to really understand how much of a social construct it is, and how we're only assured of the now. That's all we know for sure we have. is now. And because we're too scared to confront that, we dress it up in all of these things, but the truth cannot be hidden no matter what you do, right? And so you can't sit and wait for time to create this distance between you and whatever traumatic event or whatever it is that you're trying to heal. You have to be cognizant of the things that it has shifted or broken or changed internally for you. So it's almost like a stock take. Okay, we were like this, then this happened. So now how are we, right? It has damaged certain things in our mind, in our actual physical body. All right, what do we need to do to fix those things? And are they fixable, All right, who do we need? Do we need a therapist? So I had scars, and for the longest time, I just was like, I'll just cover them up and act like they don't exist, and they won't exist. But your skin is an organ that needs certain things for it to heal, right? It needs to be moisturized. That is part of healing. You can't pretend that something is not there. It is there. Okay. How do we take care of our body? All right, fine. This is what I'm going to do. This is what I'm going to buy or whatever. This is the routine I'm going to be using. In terms of my mind, this is what's broken, or I'm actually not sure what's broken, but I know something is broken. So where can I go to actually get help? Or what are the resources that I can get online? For me, intentionality is actually those actionable points where you're going out of your way to seek that healing and you're doing the work. Some of your sessions, if you're in therapy, like for me, some of them require homework. If you don't do the homework, who are you really fooling? If not yourself, So it's intentional. It's that I am actively trying to heal. Sitting back and saying that time will heal and we don't talk about these things, which I know is a very, many people do it, but I know many Africans and I know many African cultures do this, where we don't talk about these things. It's like, let's not talk about it. Or we'll say we'll pray about it, which is great. If you're religious and whatever, pray, but that is not actually dealing with the issue, right? Prayer can be something that brings you calm. But what are you actively doing to intentionally heal? You cannot leave it at prayer's doorstep. You cannot leave it at time's doorstep. Or in your partner, if you're in a relationship, it's nobody else's work but yours to do. And I know that is so unfair, because especially if it's a traumatic event that's like rape, you didn't ask for it to happen, right? It is not your fault. But then now the healing, you also have to master the energy to do it. But I think what helps is to think of it as you're fighting for yourself. You're showing up for yourself, right? Nobody else is going to do that for you. So when you look at it that way, it's like, okay, I'm doing this for me. This is an act of self-love for me. Self-love is even this uncomfortable, painful things that I have to go through to ensure I'll be okay. So I think therapy is what taught me about intentional healing, because you can't sit and just wait for time does not heal. I really need to figure out who said that quote and what they were on, because it doesn't make sense. It really does not make sense. It doesn't.
I know.